2:40 a.m. right now. I was, just trying to sleep. I had a thought about that's something that I had been questioned upon in one of my previous videos. In my video about how to begin improving your life, and I talked about how you have to improve it through mindset and by beginning in your head, by beginning to tell yourself a story, and by approaching the things that you find discomforting, that are that you don't normally approach. And I'd just been thinking about how throughout my life I've always been fascinated by, what a lot of people would consider like the typical alpha male, big, like broad shoulders, strong looking. I always found that to be very fascinating, very, very intriguing, and my favorite movie is Hercules. It's a Disney movie. If you haven't seen it, I recommend seeing it. I had a big fascination with bodybuilding for a long time. One of my favorite heroes is Superman. And I realized that a lot of that, and almost, I would say all of it, comes from my father. At his prime was a 6'4", like 225 pound, like Marine, and just strong as can be. All sorts of stories I could tell you guys about it. But for me, that's been difficult to live up to, because I'd always dreamed about being taller than him, about being stronger and bigger than him. And it was a delusion I had for a long time throughout much of my growth that I was, going to be bigger than him. It was pretty obvious from that point that, I wasn't, just from the beginning wasn't built big enough. And that has caused me a lot of discomfort with things, a lot of weird sort of sadness, a lot of weird thoughts about, whether or not I'm worthy for things, whether or not I'm worthy to do what I want to do. And I think that's something that a lot of people my age need to really take a look at. Take a look at where you came from and who really influenced you, who your idols were, who your, most hated enemies or, authority figures were. And, it's weird to think, no, I don't have to associate myself with that. I don't have to think about how that, it doesn't have to be part of who I am anymore, I don't have to constantly feel like I have to live up to my father. Like I don't have to feel guilty and ashamed because I'm not as tall as him, and I'm not, as big as him. I know that, like, I've told him, like, what I work out with, like, he says that, he'd never worked out with weights as heavy as I'm going with right now. But, he didn't, that wasn't his thing, and it's my thing. And that's something that I think is very important to understand, and to really, really begin to exist. To really live. I'm tired. Because there's a quote by Oscar Wilde, and it goes, "To live is rare. Most people exist. That is all." And I think that's a really fascinating thing, since it's true. A lot of people just go through this life, this as far as I know, one shot that we have at life, and don't really do anything. Don't really set themselves free, like, from the inside. And I think this is something that, it's an insight that I think all young people should begin to understand, that, and well, everyone in general, but especially people who are young, who are looking to identify with something, like with their family or their religion or where they're from, like, repping East Coast, something like that. I think it's important to understand that you can be completely individual, and that as a young person, as a student in college, as someone just working fresh out of high school, whoever you may be, that you don't have to label yourself or live up to something, live up to a standard. Be free.